Waylaid. Lara shook the dew from her cloak and kicked some dirt over the dwindling campfire, drinking in a full breath of the sharp morning air. It was a good day for walking, the low sun and scattered cloud promising warm but not oppressive conditions, the breeze steady yet gentle. She shouldered her pack and retrieved her staff from the rock that had been her shelter for the night. As was her habit, she took a moment to run her hand over the familiar curves and bumps of the staff, recalling the days spent carving and meditating on its shape and form as it came to be under her hands. The prop was not a necessity for wizards by any means, but her tutor was a traditionalist, and had insisted that she could not make the transition from apprentice to journeyman without first crafting her own staff. "Select your piece with care," Kjal had said while she prepared to visit the local woodland in search of timber. "It will be your companion for the rest of your days, should you choose wisely and treat it with respect. Its shape should speak to you, and you to it. A staff is both its own character and a reflection of the one who wields it." Lara had been prepared to spend days searching for the right piece of wood, and was not surprised by Kjal's raised eyebrow when she had returned before sundown on the first. Yet it had been as if her chosen piece had been placed in her path intentionally, and she had known it was hers from the first moment. Nevertheless, she had continued her search for several more hours, partly out of a sense of duty in performing her task properly, but also to avoid her tutor's accusations of carelessness. No other piece of wood looked like it was meant to be hers. It was all just so much timber and firewood. So she had shaped it, following Kjal's instruction to follow the natural patterns of the wood, while also imposing her own will upon it, and they had both been pleased with the result. It stood as high as her shoulder, and was intricately patterned with whorls and woven vines following the grain of the wood up to the tip, where the vine motif left the core of the staff to form a teardrop-shaped cage. The cage would remain empty until she had completed her journeyman travels, and discovered a suitable stone or gem to form the focus. She had named it Athasanadur, Joy of Nature. "Come along, Athas," she said, planting it at her feet and gazing along the coast road before her. "We've a long way to go." There were few travellers abroad today, and those she met did not linger beyond the briefest exchange of pleasantries. She offered her services, but was met only with polite refusal. The looks she received varied a little between apprehension and respect, with a few verging on distaste. The prevailing opinion among non-wizards was that magic users were useful folk to have around when one needed them, but not to be entirely trusted. Lara suspected this was part of the reason that the council mandated a period of travel for all wizards seeking to advance their studies. It gave the student a broader knowledge of the world, and allowed the common populace to come into more frequent contact with them. Increased familiarity would combat prejudice and fear. Around midday, the sea breeze picked up and brought a bank of cloud across to cover the sun as it reached its zenith. Lara pulled her cloak about her and raised the hood. So it was that a mile or so later she came across a cart sat rakishly in the grass at the side of the road, which she had not been able to see from a distance, as her vision was partly obscured. A group of half a dozen people stood and sat around the cart, some inspecting it and some eating a midday meal. All were dressed similarly in simple grey tunics and hose, and spoke softly to one another. "Good day," she greeted them as she approached, pushing back her hood. "Do you need any assistance?" The nearest of them turned to regard the newcomer with a guarded expression. "Good day to you," he replied perfunctorily. "We can manage, thank you." The man's face was dirty and his short hair unkempt, but this was no more unusual than his apparent distrust of strangers. She drew a little closer to the group, all of whom were now gazing at her with the same timorousness and caution as the first. She could see the cart's axle had sheared, and was in the process of being badly repaired. "I'm good with timber, if you'll allow me—" "We can manage," the man repeated, firmly. He stooped to the wheel and offered it up to the axle. Lara noticed a mark on the back of his hand, but could not make out what it was. When another man leant down to whisper something to the first, placing his hand on the man's back, she saw that he too bore the same mark. The second man glanced at Lara as he spoke, too quietly for her to hear, and seemed to be eyeing her staff. Lara felt suddenly nervous. She began to suspect she knew what the mark was that they bore, and hoped fervently that she was wrong. "That's an interesting prop you have there, stranger," the second man drawled, following a nod from the first. "If you carved that yourself, I'd say you were right about your talent with wood. Doesn't mean you can fix a cart, though." "Oh, this?" Lara regarded her precious staff as if she had found it at the side of the road mere moments before. "Bought it in Dunegid a few months ago. I'm no wood carver, but I can repair all manner of things, carts included. But it looks like you have everything under control, so—" "I dare say we do," the second man replied. "I'd say it would take magic to do a better job on this axle." The word hung on the air between them. Those gathered around the cart did not move, frozen in the pretence of their labours. Lara concentrated on not taking the step backwards for which she yearned. Instead, she gripped the shaft of Athasanador and whispered a single word. "What was that?" the man asked, a dangerous gleam in his eye. "I said, Fiomai! Fiomai kai bleko!" The grass around the cart suddenly sprouted wildly, growing from a few inches long to a foot, 2 feet, 4, 6. It wrapped itself around the legs of all who stood upon it, enveloping the cart and leaving only the second man standing shocked and enraged in the dirt road. "You dare speak the words of the gods, heretic!" he bawled at her, spittle flying from his reddening face. "You usurp the powers forbidden to mortals. You are an abomination!" He lunged wildly at her, hands raised to strike. Lara brought Athasanador around in a wide arc and connected with the fanatic's ribs just below his left arm. There was an audible crack, and the man stumbled to the side. She stepped smartly away and levelled the staff at him as he hunched over, clutching at his injured side. "You Bunusai are the true abominations," she told him. "Wizards help people. If you had not sought to attack me, I could have knit your axle back together as good as new, better than new. We could have met as strangers on the road and parted as friends. Even now I will not harm you, even though I am permitted to in self-defence. I know you will not remember this as an act of mercy, but your opinion matters as little to me as mine does to you. Do not pursue me. By the time you can, I will be far from here." She swept her staff before her, across the injured man and the other Bunusai. "Upnos," she said. As one, they sank to the ground and slept. She stooped over the body of the man in the road and dragged him over to his companions at the cart. He would be able to cut the others free when he woke. As an afterthought, she touched her staff to the injured man's side and spoke another word, visualizing the knitting of bone and repair of blood vessels. It was not an easy spell, and she knew she would have to rest before she had intended to that evening. But if there was even the smallest possibility he would remember this act of kindness, it would be worth the effort. As she resumed her journey, she wondered if the others might shun him for having been magically healed by a filthy abomination like herself, and decided that that too would prove the worth of the effort.